Welcome to Vaartaalaap. Vaartaalaap means conversation, and I'm your host, Sudita Das. Today's episode will host not one, but multiple leaders across the world who have been invited to speak on the current situation due to COVID that led to emerging trends in industry. My first guest is Pankaj Chippalkatti, connecting directly from Milan, Italy. He is the country head of Global Value Web and leads their marketing development team. Very pleased to have you, Pankaj, in this segment of Vaartaalaap.
Thank you very much, Sudita, for having me.
My pleasure. Let us start with your experience on the new working trends that surfaced with coronavirus.
So, first of all, I wish that whoever's listening to us, they and their families are safe, their extended loved ones are safe. Milan, not so much, but very close to us, Bergamo was a big hotspot for us. And that started the trend all across Italy.
Yeah.
Many companies actually viewed work from home with suspicion earlier and
Mhm.
now have been forced to legitimize it. And there were a lot of things that we were also doing earlier, but now have been just forced into doing that. For example, online calls,
Yeah.
making sure that you have online connectivity at all time, a good secure Wi-Fi with good speeds. So of course, you can always test it through speedtest.net, which is owned by Ookla, or you also have Whistle Out in Australia to check your speeds. But it's tough because you don't get to meet your colleagues face to face anymore. So we do end up using a lot of Microsoft Teams, Skype for Business, or even Zoom to get
Mhm.
on calls all day. We don't always use videos to connect because sometimes that kind of affects the streaming that we have. And of course, now that everyone's at home, everyone's also on Netflix or on Amazon Prime at the same time. So we try and keep video down as much as possible. But
Mhm.
I believe that also video calls can be more draining than an in-person meeting. And of course, because of this distance that we have, there is not much humor or there's not much banter going on that we would have in a normal conference room.
Mhm.
But it's an adjusting process, and we are learning to be better listeners because one really doesn't know when to stop and when to start speaking
Of course.
and allow other people's point of view. So we are communicating better that way. That's for sure. Another big trend that's happening is I work for a Dutch company that is into data management and analytics.
Mhm.
And for us, online security and connectivity is big. So we are all into the virtual private networks or the VPNs.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter whether I'm working now from home with an infant, or I would just prefer to go to a bar or a cafe here in Milan and just set up. So I'm just sure that
Mhm.
everything is set up securely. We are also talking about making sure that all our work is on the cloud.
Yep.
So the way our IT infrastructure is going to change and is changing, we might just go for an Amazon Web Services, AWS, or a
Mhm.
Microsoft Azure to make sure that we have all the resources we need to work from anywhere. There is also a greater focus now on what's going to happen post COVID.
Mhm.
So you've been reading a lot from what Twitter has said. Gartner's CFO survey recently published in April that 74% of all companies are planning to shift employees permanently to remote working,
Yeah.
and that's big. We, as a company, Global Value Web BV, have been fortunate as a remote services company because we mainly try and help lab analysts to focus on their core work when they're doing data work.
Mhm.
But we do all the contextual services remotely, whether it comes to laboratory master data or even product lifecycle management. And we've been lucky because we've got a lot more work these days than we did earlier. We had to change our complete set of products that we generally work on to
Mhm.
overnight providing data integrity to say hand sanitizers that's being produced because of whatever is happening.
Yep.
So I don't think we're going to be digital nomads anytime soon. But I would not be surprised if a lot of us end up converting our homes to offices, as
Yeah.
long as we have a secure place to work,
Mhm.
be it anywhere. It could be on the beach as well. I
Yep.
think that just might be the future of work.
Surely, but it feels good. Like we as human beings, we are really stepping up to counter the challenges, which is good. And as they always say, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So, in continuation to my previous question, is working from home beneficial for employers and employees?
Yeah, I think for both employers and employees alike, we definitely miss the social interaction that we have in office. There's
Thoughts?
no longer a water cooler discussion or a coffee break discussion.
Yeah.
So you get to work almost immediately.
Mhm.
But one thing that's happening is colleagues and everyone, they don't miss the commute, because that's one thing that I love too. I mean, the extra time to catch up on sleep, or just spending more time with family and kids. That's fantastic. For employers, I believe the big savings are coming from their erstwhile reliance on large real estate for office
Yes.
space. That has been a revelation, because we've been talking about offering work from home for women in our office, and 80% of our workforce is women, and they all have children. So why not allow them to at least have once a week work from home, but so that we could also reduce the size of our offices.
Yep.
And that's going to be a massive saving. I believe that places like WeWork or Regus, that have small cubicles, separate cubicles for people, that might just be the answer. Another thing is, for employees, it's great that you have a flexible working schedule, so you can start and end the day whenever you want. But there is a downside to it also, because a lot of times employees end up actually working more hours when they're at home.
True.
And when you have an email from your manager or your boss, you are compelled to answer almost immediately.
Hmm.
So in the long run, that might actually result in some sort of a burnout, but you need to maintain a good personal life, professional life balance. And that's a work in progress also for me.
Sure.
Um, of course, then there are other pluses. Cozy home clothes, you don't have to wear a suit or a tie every day.
That's true.
You're, of course, saving a lot of money. You have more time with your family.
Mm.
Also, there are less office distractions than we had earlier.
Which is
So, yeah. Also, for some people who have kids, home can be working from home can be a distraction. If you allow your child to come and play, I encourage my colleagues to just sit with their kids.
hmm
We need to cut some slack for our teams, for ourselves, not to take things too seriously at times, because things have changed,
Yep.
and we need to be flexible about those things too.
Definitely. It looks like most of the organizations will be at least revisiting their policies so that it's helpful or it's much easier for the organizations as well as their employees too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
taking a step forward, how do you measure productivity with the current situation and ensure it is maintained for you as well as your team?
So that's a good question, because there are certain practices that we did follow as a team, either as a team lead or a manager.
Mhm.
Uh, One has to realize that, and people do realize that people are the most important resource that they have. So if it's the first meeting of the day, I'm not going to get immediately to work, no matter how urgent that need is. I'm going to spend a few minutes to ask my team how they're doing, how their families are doing, what are the challenges that they face, what happened yesterday. We've also started speaking more frequently than we did in an office.
Yep.
And we try and keep our employees engaged as frequently as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really important. And you need to do that more often now because you don't see them anymore. You also need to provide your employees with the right tools and an environment in which they may succeed. That's
Definitely.
really important. I can't expect miracles out of them if they don't have the things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my mentors a long time back told me, Pankaj, that a good manager is someone who takes care of his employees
Oh, absolutely.
and don't, and so they may take care of the company. So
Mm.
don't make sure that they have everything that they need to win and enable that for them. So that for me is my mantra when it comes to productivity.
Yeah.
um, yeah, then you also need to get down to the value of your productivity per day or per week. How
Mm.
are you going to get deep work accomplished, set for the week or for the month,
Yeah.
and for the quarter? Because I think this thing is here. The COVID is here for at least a couple of more months, even though there have been ease in lockdowns. And it's a lot easier to measure productivity when you have a clearly defined start, a middle, and an end point.
Yes.
So once that is done, it's very easy to judge the output, volume, and the quality that they have. We also have trackers and tools in place to
Mm-hmm.
measure that. We don't really measure hours worked per se because
Yeah.
we also depend and trust our colleagues to do their best.
So we will
So
be at different parameters to measure productivity. Yeah. That's what I can safely say, I guess.
yes, yes. So if you have your KRAs, your key responsibility areas or goals defined, if
Yeah.
you have your key performance metrics or KPIs
Mm.
clearly set, then it's business as usual. It's
Definitely.
just a different setting.
Yes. So before we end, do you want to send any message to our viewers on how to swim safely during this hard time?
Since you're asking me for a one-line answer, I would just say that treat social distancing as a physical distancing,
And
and it's just that it's physical distancing,
and
and
that's
we need
what
to
people
practice.
in Italy are maintaining, yeah, and following.
Yes, yes. I think we've become more disciplined as well, and
Yeah.
I think we should also start practicing distance socializing. We need to keep speaking to our loved ones on a regular basis. So treat social distancing as physical distancing and
Mhm.
practice distance socializing as much as possible.
That sounds wonderful, Pankaj. Thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you and people in Italy a very healthy future.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sudita. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Continuing with our discussion on the emerging trends in industry in the current situation, let's move on to the other side of the globe. I am going to welcome Amandeep Singh connecting today from India. Amandeep has 20 years of experience spanning across multiple facets of IT industry and at present is engaged as senior manager with NCR Corporation specializing in R&D, research and development projects, big data and artificial intelligence. He is an alumni of prestigious ISB, Indian School of Business, and MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It feels great to have you, Amandeep, and hear on your outlook about the situation in India. Welcome.
Thank you, Sudita. Good to talk to you.
Great to hear from you about your outlook regarding the situation in India when it comes to new working trends that surfaced with COVID.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, COVID is presenting a lot of new ways of working, as I call, not only from individuals' perspective, but from organizations also, because an organization which spans across multiple countries, multiple geographies,
Mhm.
it has to balance three sides of the triangle. It has to balance the government guidelines very closely because government guidelines are changing almost daily.
Yes.
It has to continue meeting its goals, that is the strategic goals. Some organizations have revised their guidelines, etc. then it has to manage employee expectations also, which are also changing in this world of virtual working. So, keeping this in mind, from employee perspective, working virtual has never been the same earlier, because earlier employees were asking for work from home very occasionally, and that was to meet their work balance, work-life balance. But now it's like continuous working from home, and they have to manage their personal life, they have to manage their work commitments. So this whole phase of lockdowns, etc., can be divided to three parts. Initially, it was responding to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Then we came into resolving into various kind of issues that we fought in the response phase. And
Yeah.
once we come out of this would be the thriving phase. So responding was more of BCP. The BCP was tested, BCP was implemented. Then whatever lessons were learned, then we stabilized during the next month and month or month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
After this would be a new normal, that would be the thriving phase. So that is where now everyone would be tested as to how we go with this new normal of working virtual, by meeting the commitments as well as complying with the government norms that are changing on a daily basis. So it's definitely new world challenges, but rather than looking at the problems, we should look at the opportunities that are arising out of these problems.
Definitely.
Mhm.
It seems like the world is really getting closer and realigning themselves because your views are very similar
Absolutely.
to my previous guest's views who resides in Italy. So yeah, we should be
Yeah,
always looking at the brighter
absolutely.
side. So
Yeah,
in continuation,
absolutely.
definitely. In continuation to my previous question, what are the views, like what are your specific views on working from home? Agree. This agreement has benefits for both employers and employees.
Mhm. So, uh, I will point you to one survey that was done by writers in the month of April on what are employees' perspective of work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, One thing I was very surprised to see is that about 76% employees said that it is very challenging working from home.
Okay.
And I could empathize with them that it is challenging by way of because we are at home all the time, we cannot go anywhere else. So which means that our work laptop is already open, and we are always in some kind of a work mode. And our
Yeah.
employers also understand this. And initially, when we were in the response phase that I mentioned, so initially what was happening was work commitment were coming at any time of the day. So which means that someone who is working on India time zone,
Mm-hmm.
he would start his work day at 10 o'clock and would go on till, let's say, 11, 11:30 in the night. So that was the testing phase, the response phase, and that is why employees were feeling burned out at that particular time. But in the second phase that I mentioned, the resolve phase, that is where uh, almost all the companies starting realizing this, and they started optimizing this particular work culture. So they started keeping in mind employees' well-being. They
Yeah.
started putting some guidelines on how to maintain your office work time at home. So some companies did some trainings to people that how you can still maintain your work-life balance, and you should maintain your work-life balance. So coming to your question, whether it is beneficial or not, so productivity is definitely gone up.
Mm-hmm.
There are multiple reasons for that. One is big reason is the travel to office. So in
Yeah.
cities like Bangalore, Mumbai, or Delhi, an individual spends on average 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours on the road in traffic. So that part is gone. So which means that people are not tired when they reach office, and they can start their work maybe a bit earlier, and end their work a bit earlier, and be with their families in the evening. So from employer perspective, productivity is gone, and that is proven by numbers as well.
Yep.
From employees' perspective, after they have learned to manage their work and their personal life, their work-life balance is also increasing. So
Mhm.
I think it is a win-win situation if we go with this. But one has to balance everything when we get to new normal. So we will see how it transforms into. But now the world of financial management, if we say, employers are reporting drastic reduction in OPEX. So their facility expenses have gone down, their data center charges are gone down.
Yep.
Some companies are reducing their network bandwidth also in the office because no one is using the bandwidth. Everyone is on the public internet. So
Mhm.
that way, there is definitely a benefit for both employee and employers.
So something which is very specific to India, I just want to understand for my viewers. So as almost 99% of the people are working from home, so what are the kind of
Yeah.
challenges in terms of technology that you or your counterparts face in India? Like, say, for example, bandwidth challenges, or there might be some load shedding issues. So how are these challenges coming up, and you and others are coping with that?
So there are few aspects to this. So some of my team members were gone home in their native towns when it all started.
Yep.
So they were stuck there and they could not come back. For them, it is a challenge because many of them come from far-flung areas, which are like tier 3 or tier 4 cities in India, where internet bandwidth is not that much. I
Mm-hmm.
have a couple of guys who had gone out for vacation to some hilly areas and they are stuck there.
Yeah.
So their hotels were not able to provide them the bandwidth, and they were using their mobile phones to connect to a VPN and then connect to the work. So there were definitely a lot of challenges in that.
Yep.
So what many companies are doing, except for those outliers who are out of the work location, for
Mm-hmm.
others, many companies are providing them office funded high speed internet. So that way, this kind of a bandwidth challenge is going away. And I have seen improvement in the bandwidth from ISPs as well. Talk about Airtel or Geo.
Yep.
I have been using both of these and have not faced much problems around that. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, there are peaks and valleys around this because when it gets to evening India time, that is when US and European countries gets online and meetings etc. start. So that is when it picks up and the people start reporting slowdowns. But otherwise, it has been okay so far, except for those outliers that I said that they are using their mobile. They
Mm-hmm.
can work only that much on mobile internet.
Definitely. So, taking a step forward, as we have already started discussing about productivity and how it is being,
Mhm,
like how the organizations and the people are trying to ensure and manage that. So, with people,
mhm.
as you just mentioned, there might be people who got stuck and cannot come back to their prime cities, and they are facing some bandwidth as well as internet issues. So, is it something
Mhm.
that's affecting the productivity, or people are doing something else to manage the productivity and maintain it?
So here comes the value of being agile, not only in delivering projects in agile mode, but also being agile in your behavior,
Yep.
being agile in the way you get the work done. So talking about those people first who have limited resources to do their primary job. So if let's say there is a person who has to continuously access remote servers, for example, to do his day-to-day work, but
Mhm.
he's on mobile internet, he cannot do that. Productivity would go down. So
Yep.
that is where companies' policies come into picture, and I have seen one particular company in Bangalore where they have given empowerment to their managers that they can decide which employee need to switch their work to a low bandwidth kind of a thing. So maybe if someone is working on a high bandwidth kind of a work, uh, he's given temporarily a work that is more operational in nature so that he can continue contributing to the company's goals, but his productivity also doesn't go down.
Yep.
So that way, being agile should be kept in mind when we are dealing with such kind of a situation. Now, about productivity, so I think time has come to measure productivity based on outcome rather than number of hours fed into the timesheet.
Yep.
So this has been a topic of debate for past many years for the services industries that instead of going by fixed bid or a time and material contracts,
Mhm.
how about going to a outcome based contracts? And some companies in Bangalore have started going on outcome based projects as well. So whatever number of resources you put on, whatever hours you put on, client is only concerned about what outcome you are giving to me, and for that only they will be making the payments to the service industry. So similar way, teams also need to be measured on the basis of outcome, not basis on number of hours they put in a day.
Yep.
So keeping that in mind, I think multiple ways to handle that. Some maybe via governance frameworks. You may extend your governance from a typical three layer of governance to one more layer which is more execution based.
Mhm.
Or for teams which are agile, you can transform your daily stand-ups in a way that it is not only talking about those three questions, but it talks about more of a how their project is going, how we are meeting the various milestones within the project.
Mhm.
And why not also use this stand up to solve some problem? Maybe I'm facing some problem which someone else has already solved. We can use this stand up to solve my problem in that stand up meeting. So, which means
Yep.
that we are trying to engage the overall team rather than just focusing on those three questions of stand up. So,
Definitely.
that way, I think we can keep team engaged as well as see how we are meeting the goals of the projects and measure the productivity in that way.
Mhm. No, that's absolutely correct, which means working from home will be encouraged in India in the coming days, which solves a lot of issues with
Yeah,
conveyance, etc. Yeah.
that is going to happen. That is going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we end the show, do you want to send any message to our viewers on how to swim safely during this hard time?
Um, so, irrespective of whether someone listening to me is an individual contributor or a team member,
Mhm.
um, I think we should follow a circle which is divided into 5 phases. So we should do a reflection. We should recommit. We should re-engage, and we should rethink, and we should reboot.
Mhm.
So all the time we have to continue doing this 5 phase circle, whether it is our personal goals, whether it is our professional goals. This will help us being every time reflective of what we are doing and
Yeah.
learn from our own mistakes. So this is a time of great rethinking and finding opportunities of improvement in this time for the time to come.
Definitely, completely agree with you. Thank you so much for your
Thank,
time today, Mandeep. Wishing you and everyone
thank you, Sudita.
a very healthy and bright future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
As we move on to the other side of the globe, let me introduce Daniel Pludek from Melbourne, Australia. Daniel has over 20 years of experience with multinationals, having played important roles as Group CTO, Chief Technology Officer, Group Security Officer with Applied Direct, CEO and Executive Board Director of Utility Software Services, General Manager of Toll Group, and many more. Currently, Daniel is engaged in the advisory space with out of the box IT. Let me welcome Daniel to understand the emerging industry trends with COVID in Australia. Welcome, Daniel, to this episode of Vaartaalaap.
Thank you, Sudita. Nice to meet you and nice to be here.
Looking forward. So let us kick off the Q&A session with an understanding of new working trends that surfaced with COVID. What are your thoughts and what are your observations as you being part of this Australian professional culture?
I don't believe we have yet realised the new working trends yet. I believe the lockdowns and the COVID has pushed us towards existing capability that already existed.
Hmm.
But as it persists and with the secondary lockdown in Melbourne, I believe we will start to see further trends and further refinements of the mechanisms that exist today. What it has done, however, is it forced organisations who were reluctant to allow remote workers
Hmm.
and workers who did require flexibility. It has forced them along that journey very quickly to maintain productivity.
Yep.
Um, I believe it's also forced organisations to implement upgrades to their infrastructure and security policies and practices.
Hmm.
Uh, because with the remote working, it does open up increased risk of data loss and other items for organisations.
Yep.
And it's been amazing to see the speed at which some organisations turned a 3-year program into 3 to 4 weeks when they had to. Outside of that, I believe the investment has been made. It has been baselined and stabilised for now,
Hmm.
but we'll start to see more innovations as this becomes the new normal.
Definitely. So, in continuation to my previous question, what are your views on working from home? Because there are different challenges that comes with working from home, like 100% working from home. So, do you agree this arrangement has benefits for both the employer as well as the employees in long run?
I believe it has negatives and benefits for both employees and the employer in the long run.
Mhm.
Some of the more immediate benefits for the employer will be things such as office space.
Yep.
So a lot of employers up until 2 to 3 years ago were struggling with office space and moving to things such as hot desking and flexible desking or running out of buildings.
Hmm.
Um, there will be a benefit where the employers will no longer have to pay expensive rents. However, the offset against that are, of course, lease considerations, and also I believe there will be spacing constraints. So, for example, you might need to maintain the same amount of space, but only 30% of your workforce can appear on time. So it's a bit of a cost benefit.
Yep.
Um, from a employer perspective as well, I see another benefit being in large cities, especially, employees spend a lot of time traveling and commuting.
Yeah.
2 to 3 hours a day
Mhm.
typically does work in the employer's favour. And I know personally, when I get up, I'll check my emails at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Hmm.
Whilst when I was commuting, I'd be getting up at 6, and by the time I got to the office, it could be up to 8:30 in the morning. So you do get that extra productivity, but it also drives a negative for the employee who is now on all the time.
Yep.
So they're contactable, and items which could take 2 minutes in the office now requires a 30-minute meeting slot. So it is a balance pro and con there as well.
Yep.
Um, I see the biggest benefits being for people who have families, where it does allow them that flexibility to maybe not having to put their children in after school care or pay for care, because they can still balance a full work day
Of course.
with doing a quick drop off, pick up, and that time is offset against going for
Mhm.
coffees, etc. Um, Personally, though, I believe it's going to be hard to build a team culture and a corporate culture in a fully remote workforce.
Yep.
Um, I believe the right balance is at least a couple of days in the office for staff where they can interact and build those relationships,
Mhm.
but only for that specific component. Outside of that, I believe you can be just as effective remotely as you
Mhm.
can within the office.
Sure.
And I think it's a good enabler for people who stepped out of the workforce to rear their children and families until they become school age.
Hmm.
Uh, some of the new technologies, such as diversified contact centres and being able to work from home, will allow a lot of those people to enter back into the workforce once the economy goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I being a mother of a newborn, so I can very well relate to what you just mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have two small children as well,
Mhm.
and I see big benefits to being able to work from home, and especially when you share the load with a spouse who also works.
Yes.
You can very easily balance that load throughout the week with the remote
Mhm.
working standards.
Absolutely. So taking a step forward, do you measure, like, how do you measure productivity in the current situation and ensure it is well maintained with the employer as well as the employees?
So I probably have always taken a slightly different approach. I measure productivity on outcomes.
Yeah.
Every role has an outcome or a milestone or something that you need to achieve every hour, day, week,
Hmm.
month. And I've always had the approach I really didn't care if my staff member was on the beach drinking margaritas or in the office sitting next to me, as long as they're getting that job done.
Sure.
Um, I haven't necessarily worked in environments where my peers or superiors will agree with that approach.
Hmm.
Um, but I believe in most roles, it's very easy to have targets and measures
Hmm.
as well as progress measures to see if somebody is working. And in general, most people turn up to do a good job. You know, you only talk about a small percentage that may try to bypass the system.
Yeah.
But in general, as long as people are very clear as to what their roles are, what the expectations are, and what the outcomes are, I see no difference between on site or remote.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thanks for that. So before we end, do you want to send any message to our viewers on how to swim safely during this hard time?
I believe people need to accept that we're not going back to what was our old normal, and we need to accept the new normal. And the quicker we can accept the new environment and the new normal, the quicker we'll be able to move forward and recover.
Hmm.
Uh, and once we accept that normal, we can put those procedures, policies, and tools in place
Yep.
to hopefully be more effective than we were previously.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time today. I wish you and everyone in Australia a very healthy and bright future. Thanks,
Thank
Danny.
you very much. Thank you.
Let me conclude the episode by saying soon there will be light in the end of the tunnel. Stay safe. I'm your host, Sudita Dasgupta. Thank you.